morning, everyone. Let's see. It's always nice to return to Sweetwater and spend some time with you, as we're doing this morning. For me, early afternoon. Uh, as Choa mentioned, I have a connection with Sweetwater. I used to live in San Diego for over 25 years. And currently, for those of you who don't know, I'm in Detroit, Michigan. And when I moved from San Diego back to Detroit to be near my family and start taking college classes again, um, I had to find a new community, place to practice. It was important to me as I transitioned from San Diego uh, to being near my family. As I transitioned from being newly released from prison to a life as a free person. When I transitioned from a life of chaos and being an addict to moving to Detroit and being near my family, returning to college, starting my life over again, and trying something different. And for me, the foundation of having a different sort of life was not just about no longer using drugs and alcohol, uh, running the streets and such, or more so the drugs and the alcohol. It's not just about putting that stuff down. It was about what was underneath that kind of drove that. And they say that the use of the substances, the alcohol and drugs and perhaps other detrimental habits uh, are only the symptom of the problem. There's something else going on underneath that needs to be addressed. And for me, this practice of ours, the middle way, Zen Buddhism, or Buddhism, is that foundation. Um, some people say that Buddhism is more of a philosophy than a religion, and some people say the opposite, and perhaps there are other opinions. But for me, it's I kind of like the expression. It's about the art of living one's life, crafting that art, cultivating, and as probably some of you can recognize, being in a community it can be very helpful. And so we have this. I have where I'm at still Point Zen Buddhist Temple in Detroit, and you have Sweetwater Zen Center. I think we're both very fortunate to have access to this sort of community. Um, my first contact with Sweetwater was behind the electrified barbed wire fence. Volunteers came in on a regular basis. And then when I was released, I stayed in touch, and somehow here I am again, spending time with you. How wonderful. As I mentioned, I'm at Sweetwater, I mean, I'm at Still Point now, and have been since 2000. ordained in 2015. So whenever they have services there at Still Point, they start off after the zazen meditation period and some brief chanting. They start off by asking a member to read from the Dammapada. Um, so that's what I'd like to share with you today, if you don't mind. I'm going to be reading from this version of the Dammapada. I don't know if you can read it or not, but it's written by Jerry, or edited, I guess you could say, by Jerry Larkin, who's the founder of Still Point, a woman. Her temple name is Parang. She retired, but I'm so grateful that she started Still Point in the city instead of in some rural location, as was her original idea. So that folks like me who live in the city have greater access to it. There are all kinds of Dhammapadas, translations, I guess you could say. There's a few of them. There's probably a whole bunch more, but I'm going to read from the Still Point version, if you'll indulge me to kind of get us started. This is the Dhammapada is a collection of sayings from the Buddha, from various sutras. I am not a Buddhist historian or a scholar. I'm simply a practitioner of the middle way. So I don't know all the ins and outs about the histories and the content, but I do like to read it every once in a while. And when I thought about speaking with you today, I thought to myself, I'd like to share kind of what we do at Still Point as far as reading a chapter. Each chapter is divided into verses or stanzas. And I'm going to read chapter 21. And in this book, it's entitled Miscellaneous. I'm going to read the entire thing. That's what we usually do, is read the entire thing. And then afterwards, our guiding teacher will give a Dharma talk. So here we go. Miscellaneous. By giving up a lesser happiness, one may gain a much greater one. Let the wise give up the lesser to attain the greater. A person who seeks her own happiness by inflicting pain on others ends up caught in hatred. By doing things that should not be done and not doing things that should be done, the arrogant and unmindful will only deepen their corruptions. Those who earnestly practice mindfulness will be aware of what they are doing. They will not do things that should not be done. Instead, they will do what needs doing. As a result, their corruptions will dissipate. Having killed craving and conceit, having let go of attachment, the holy ones have no regrets. Having killed craving and conceit, having destroyed the hindrances to their practice, the holy ones have no regrets. From the time they arise throughout the day until they go to sleep, the followers of Buddha constantly take refuge in him. From the time they arise throughout the day until they sleep, the followers of Buddha constantly take refuge in the Dharma. From the time they arise throughout the day until they go to sleep, followers of Buddha know not to be attached to their bodies. From the time they arise throughout the day until they go to sleep, the followers of Buddha delight in doing no harm. From the time they arise throughout the day until they go to sleep, the followers of Buddha delight in meditation. It is hard to be wholly spiritual. It is difficult to delight in practicing spirituality all the time. But our earthly lives are also hard, and associating with people who are not spiritual can be difficult as well. The main point is this: woe befalls people who live a completely worldly life. Do not pursue a life of woe. A person who is confident and virtuous, who has fame and wealth, is honored wherever he may go. Like the Himalayas, the good are visible even from afar. Like bullets shot in the night, the wicked cannot be seen, even if they are right next to us. Those who, with great energy, sit alone, rest alone, walk alone, and control themselves will find delight in the forest. That's a translation from the Dammapada, and then the book has kind of stories, I guess, from the editor Jerry Larkin Parang, anecdotes to kind of drive home the points. I don't know if anyone has taken the time to kind of look through the Dammapada, but it can be a source of inspiration and a way to stay in touch with the teachings. That's relatively simple, and the person can penetrate the teachings. Now, thank you for allowing me to read that lengthy reading. And if you don't mind, what I'd like to do now is just kind of reflect on a few points that stood out for me from that reading. A few points that stood out for me, not from the point of scholarly interest and not from the point of historical knowledge, but just kind of practical things that can be lost sometimes in these teachings, especially if a person is not practicing sitting on a regular basis. If a person is practicing sitting on a regular basis, these things can be a bit more accessible. So I always recommend sitting. There's nothing wrong with reading, but if a person just constantly leans on reading, the practice can lack depth and very strong roots. So, to one of the first things I'd like to reflect on, consider, is mindfulness. It kind of stood out for me when I was reading it, trying to figure out what I was going to talk to you about today. And mindfulness for me kind of stood out. I think it also is chronological too. The things that I'm going to talk about, and then as they are mentioned in the reading. Now, you've probably seen in the media or in books all this buzz about mindfulness, and I've even heard someone use the expression Mick mindfulness, about how it's everywhere and being used to promote almost anything. But I think under this context, you and I are kind of on the same page about mindfulness and how it relates to our practice. In my understanding, it relates to our practice because it impacts how we live our lives, our daily lives, to be self-aware perhaps as we understand who we are and the reality of the circumstance of the present moment, we can make wiser choices rather than, I guess you could say the opposite, live mindless lives, which to me kind of speaks to a life of chaos, instability, a lack of clarity, isolation, disconnection, dissatisfaction. So when we talk about mindfulness and we talk about the present moment, we talk about coming back to ourselves, back to our lives. Because if we look a little deeper, we can see that the only place that our lives are really happening is in this present moment. And so to not cultivate mindfulness means to not be in one's life as it unfolds in the present moment, and perhaps be lost either in the past or in the future, which can be figments of our imagination, the conditioned mind, habits, autopilot. And by cultivating mindfulness, we kind of bring back the vibrance of being a human being, living our lives. Let me see if I can find that first mention of mindfulness and read it back to you, if that's perhaps appropriate. Those who earnestly practice mindfulness will be aware of what they are doing. They will not do things that should not be done. Instead, they will do what needs doing, and as a result, their corruptions will dissipate. So to me, that also kind of points to living a mindless life is a bit like the expression is a bull in a china shop, thrashing about, causing harm, perhaps unintentionally, perhaps intentionally. Harm to those around us, harm to ourselves. So when we cultivate mindfulness, we take care of ourselves. And as we take care of ourselves and we take care of our lives, we begin to understand that that also takes care of the world and people in our lives. So it's important. Uh, you may pay attention to the news or social media, and you can see, perhaps even within yourself, that it is possible to believe and think almost anything. So we have to be careful how we use what we believe, how we are thinking, how we are feeling. If it's possible for anybody else to be deluded, why isn't it possible for myself to be deluded as well? So, what can I do to assist that? Perhaps I can cultivate mindfulness so that I am less likely to add fuel to the fire in my own life and the lives of others and in this world. Sounds like it's something worth pursuing. The next thing that I want to kind of touch on, it kind of pops up in the reading. They mention it is a bit repetitious, but that's okay. Sometimes poetry is. They mention the Buddha, the Dharma. Uh, you and I were practicing in the day, so we kind of have an understanding of what these things mean in relationship to our practice. Let me see if I can find that reading where they mention the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Oh, here we go. From the time they arise throughout the day until they go to sleep, the followers of Buddha constantly take refuge in him, the Buddha. From the time they arise throughout the day until they go to sleep, the followers of Buddha constantly take refuge in the Dharma. The Dharma. From the time they arise throughout the day until they go to sleep, the followers of the Buddha constantly take refuge in the Sangha. And there we have the triple gem, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So, in my understanding, historically, when we say the Buddha, we mean the historical Buddha, the person who lived 2,500 years ago and brought this way of life to himself and then shared with others. And to those many practitioners who have carried the flame forward until today, as you and I are doing this day, today, we are living that to carry it forward for others. As it has been carried forward for us, we honor and respect the historical Buddha. On another level, though, it can also mean the awakened mind. And the awakened mind is not something that's over there. We're talking about ourselves because this is our true nature. You may have heard that expression before. Our true nature. Realizing our true nature. Realizing our Buddha nature. Realizing who we are. The awakened mind. It's not a destination, it's here. And so we sit to investigate that for ourselves and directly. The Dharma, the second part of the triple gem, that could be historically or technically the teachings, the various sutras, the books that have been written that you and I kind of look to learn from, to get deeper in our practice and to cultivate understanding. The teachings passed down throughout the centuries, originated 2,500 years ago. And on another level, it's more closely related to, as well, I guess you could say, with the lessons that you and I experience on a daily basis. So we look to the teachings to share and learn and investigate. But again, this is about you and I as human beings living our lives in a very, very practical way. With our enlightened mind, cultivating such, we are more mindful and aware in the present moment as our lives unfold right before our very eyes, and we are present and available for the lessons that it offers. Direct lessons, the Sangha. From the time they arise throughout the day until they go to sleep, the followers of Buddha constantly take refuge in the Sangha. Historically and technically, that's the community of ordained priests, lay practitioners, but perhaps on another level, it's about our connection to each other as human beings, our connection to the environment, the plants, the animals, those outside of the community living the middle way, as you and I practice. So for me, when I recollect or chant the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, I go to refuge to the Buddha, I go to refuge to the Dharma, I go to refuge to the Sangha. It's also about those very deep and real personal connections to that truth, to those truths. That the awakened mind is here. The awakened mind being present is available to all these lessons that are available for us in our daily experience as human beings, just going about our business mindfully. And the Sangha, our connection to each other as human beings, and the importance of that relationship, and our responsibility in that relationship. The environment, plants, animals, birds, fellow human beings, and to ourselves. The other point I wanted to touch on, besides the first one, was mindfulness. The second one was the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The third one, they mentioned meditation in that reading that I just offered you. See if I can find that. From the time they arise throughout the day until they go to sleep, the followers of the Buddha delight in meditation. Very similar to the other ones, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. It goes on to say, it is hard to be wholly spiritual. It is difficult to delight in practicing spirituality all the time. But our earthly lives are also hard. And associating with people who are not spiritual can be difficult. Meditation, spirituality is kind of, for me, what I'm kind of hearing in that section there. And the reason it kind of stood out for me is because I wonder sometimes if it's possible that we can kind of falsely imagine that spirituality is something that we go get on Sunday. It's Sunday morning. I'm going to get up, put my shoes on, get dressed, drive over to the temple, bow, come in, sit through the service, shake a few hands on the way out, leave, and now I'm back in my mundane life. I'm wondering if that's how we can sometimes imagine our spiritual practice. Go to the temple, meditate. I'm in a spiritual setting. I say goodbye, I leave. Spirituality is over there. Monday through Saturday, that's when I do the other stuff. I'm busy. I got things to do. But on Sundays, I go check out a little spirituality. I know I'm being a bit extreme, but please indulge me. It kind of ties back to what I was saying earlier about the first point, mindfulness, that kind of came up for us. How we live our lives and the importance of mindfulness. I'm wondering if when we cultivate mindfulness and our intentions are sincere, we put forth the effort, we recognize our responsibility as we live our lives as human beings right now in this moment to ourselves and to others and to the world. That when we cultivate this mindfulness to watch how we are living, how we're thinking, how we're feeling, to be aware of what's around us, what's happening around us, I'm wondering if it's possible that this mundane life of ours, Monday through Friday, working, taking care of our business, going to school, the everyday events seemingly separate from going to the temple, are not in actuality us living our lives within the realm of spirituality in its deepest sense of the meaning. I'm wondering if perhaps when we cultivate this mindfulness and try to live it to the best of our ability from moment to moment, day to day, day in and out, not just on Sundays, we are inseparable from living a life of spirituality. Just as we imagine the awakened mind is over there for us to work towards and get, it's here. Just as I could think that to go over to the library and read these books, these Dharma books, or watch these videos, it's over there. I begin to realize it's right here. In my life, right now, this very moment. Instead of thinking that perhaps my connection is over there and I have to go there and here and everywhere else to realize that connection and to live it when it's already here. Now I'm saying this to you and you're hearing me, but hearing it for yourself directly from your own mind and heart is evidence of the truth, evidence of this truth. One of the most direct ways to access this truth is to sit still. It is the gateway. I'm saying this to you from my own personal experience. I'm asking you to investigate your own experience. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe any books. As a matter of fact, I recommend that you do not. I do recommend that you at least consider and then begin to investigate for yourself what all of this means. Because that's the only way that it's ever going to be practical or relevant. So, as I usually talk about, uh, please returning to the cushion and the importance of that, I've kind of pointed out a few things that kind of indicate that this might be helpful. You have a wonderful community. I hope that you cherish it and lean into it, but remember to take that with you when you leave. And when you return, bring something with you, your practice outside of Sunday. You don't have to come to services as a beggar looking for a handout. Although sometimes in desperation, that's how we start. That's how we come in. But we don't have to continue that way. We can go home and practice, apply these teachings on a daily basis, live them, so that when we come on Sundays, not only are we there to receive, but we are also there to give. Because we have something to give. Always have. We just didn't know it until we took the time to sit still and rest in it. I'd like to close, if you don't mind, by reading one of my favorite books. You probably heard me read from it before, Sensing Ming. Just a short paragraph, and then we can close. Thank you for your patience, for your ear, and for your willingness to be here and participate. I wish you all very well. The great way is embracing and spacious. To live in it is neither easy nor difficult. Those who rely on limited views are fearful and irresolute. The faster they hurry, the slower they go. To have a narrow mind and to be attached to getting enlightenment is to lose one's own center and go astray. When one is free from attachment, all things are as they are, and there is neither coming nor going. Thank you very much for your time.